Alright guys, today we are going to be reacting to Hermann Göring train. Still exists. It's an old train. People were just asking if it really exists or not. We're just going to simply jump in and see what's going on. Let's see. Oh, look at that. Wow.
2 years ago, I published a video about Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring's Special Leaders Train. All of the top wartime German leaders had their own armored trains, from Hitler's Amerika to Göring's Asien, providing them with very secure and well-guarded moving residences that could also double as mobile headquarters, enabling them to travel around the Reich in style, comfort and security. Subsequent research has shown that a number of carriages originally part of Göring's special train still exist today. I've identified at least 3 that are currently on public display in different German museums, which is pretty astounding considering the fate of so much of the Nazi leaders' possessions, residences and vehicles. Let's look again at Göring's train, carriage by carriage, to determine which of them still exist today. The carriages were wood-panelled, carpeted and expensively decorated and furnished with cherry wood tables, cabinets and chairs. Göring's train normally consisted of 15 carriages. Due to the carriage's great weight, Asia was hauled by a pair of powerful Kriegslok or war locomotives.
Dang, look at... Oh my god, we have come a long way. Look at that, man. Oh. Talk about contamination to the environment, my goodness.
Immediately behind the second engine was a Flakwagen, a special carriage mounting 2 quad 20mm Flak-Vierling 38 anti-aircraft guns. There was another Flakwagen at the other end of the train. The special carriages were designed by the Luftwaffe and were standard on all Nazi leaders' trains. The guns would be raised up on a special platform to stand off a strafing or bombing attack by Allied aircraft. Each Flakwagen had 5 crew compartments for 17 gunners, drawn from the 9th Regiment General Göring. Behind the front Flakwagen was a utility and service carriage, then a luggage carriage. This carriage contained rooms to store Göring's many uniforms and civilian suits, decorations and medals, weapons and other accoutrements. Next was Göring's personal Pullman carriage, which included 2 large bedrooms and a full bathroom with an outsized porcelain bathtub. There was also a dressing room, servants' quarters and a sitting room. The sitting room was often utilized
as basically a moving hotel.
As a cinema. The next carriage along was the Göring family carriage, which would be used occasionally if his wife Emmy and daughter Edda were travelling with him, plus space for servants and bodyguards. This carriage still exists, Salonwagen 10205. Though a total of 13 carriages were built for Nazi leaders' trains in 1937, including 3 so-called Salonwagens, each leader had some opportunity to personalize his own carriage. Göring's 10205 had a front and rear salon, with bookshelves installed between the 2 rooms.
Wow.
Göring's Salonwagen was the only one of the 3 to be built for Nazi leaders' trains to have a desk. A bathtub was built into a room in the middle of the carriage, a special type called a sitting bathtub, linked by a corridor to bedrooms 1 and 2. Wow. This carriage was originally to have been Göring's personal salon carriage, but he found its accommodations too cramped. His bedroom was too small for his liking, and his bathtub also too small for his girth. So he had a different salon car designed and built, but 10205 continued in use on his train Asia. And after 1940 was downgraded for use by his wife and daughter. Towards the end of the war, carriage 10205 ended up used on Himmler's special train, until its capture by the Allies. On the 1st of June 1945, Salon Car 10205 was moved to Frankfurt for use by the Americans, and in 1949 was handed over to the West German authorities, and in 1953 it became part of the Federal Chancellor's train, including visiting Moscow in 1955, during which Konrad Adenauer negotiated the release of the last German prisoners of war held in the Soviet Union.
Damn. Some of you guys were saying that a lot of Germans wanted the Allies to take them as prisoners because some of the Germans were too afraid of the Russians. So
it continued to be used until 1974, when it was replaced by a brand new salon car. Up until 1990, Göring's old carriage was rented out, including being used by rock star Eric Clapton during his tour in Germany, before being donated to the House of History in Bonn, where it is displayed today.
Oh wow, they're not using it anymore.
Next along the train was the Communications and Situation Room carriage, containing a radio room, fitted with a 700-watt shortwave radio transmitter, Enigma encryption machines using the Luftwaffe code, and a telephone exchange. Phones could be used when the train was sitting in a station, as the train was simply plugged into the German landline telephone network run by the post office. In this carriage there was a conference room, dominated by a large portrait of Adolf Hitler. Göring used this room for meetings with generals and dignitaries and planning conferences. Göring loved his food, and behind the communication carriage was his special dining car. All dining cars on Nazi leaders' trains were provided by the Metropa company, using their own specially screened waiters and chefs. This carriage also exists today, number 10241. Built in 1937, it consisted of 2 dining compartments and 2 kitchens. The outer dining room had seating for...
I'm wondering if they still use it though. Do they still use it? Because if they don't use it, that's a waste, right?
10 people, the inner room for 14.
Look at that, it's beautiful.
A dividing panel could be removed to create one very large dining room. Originally the kitchens had coal-fired ovens, but when parked inside tunnels as a precaution against air attack, Göring was bothered by the coal smoke that filtered down the tunnel and into the various compartments, and in 1941 electric ovens were installed. 10241 was handed to the British at the end of the war, and in 1947 the British changed the internal layout, and in 1964 it was changed again by the Germans and upgraded as a support car for the German president, and also fitted with a radio system. It was part of several trains that carried important VIPs, including President Charles de Gaulle of France in 1962.
That's crazy. Look at these guys, man. They look so well pulled together, right? What happened to us, man? What happened to us? A lot of these men, they look so well put together.
And Willy Brandt in 1970. And was part of the special train that carried Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip during their state visit to West Germany in 1978. A train, incidentally, that was made up of carriages from several former Nazi leaders' trains. Retired in 1978, today it is on display in Koblenz.
They don't use it anymore.
Behind the dining car was a sleeping carriage for close aides, staff, and more bodyguards. One of Göring's guest sleeping carriages also exists today. It is one of a pair constructed in 1938, the other used on the Luftwaffe High Command train codenamed Robinson. The carriage contained 8 sleeping cabins and a breakfast room. A toilet also existed between the breakfast room and bedroom number 1.
Okay, wow.
Bathroom facilities were limited to open wash basins in each cabin. In March 1941, all the bedrooms were upgraded to include desks and filing cabinets. Both of these sleeping carriages were captured intact by the US Army at Berchtesgaden Station, where Göring had ordered his trains evacuated full of his art treasures and personal effects from Karrenhall, his huge estate outside Berlin, that by April 1945 was threatened by the advancing Red Army. Carriage 10223 was taken over by the Americans, while 10234 went directly into the rolling stock of the new German railways. 10234 was later converted into a so-called company car in 1953 for use by mobile tour groups in Germany. With much of the original equipment removed and a transmission room, a tour guide's cabin, a pantry and a storeroom added, plus a dance floor. Externally, the carriage was repainted burgundy red. Retired in 1980, it was transferred to the Nuremberg Transport Museum and since 2006 has been at the Deutsches Bahn Museum in Koblenz.
At least they're keeping that.
The next two cars were Metropa sleeping carriages, not quite as luxurious as the Pullman, but housing more bodyguards, staff and aides. And behind these, another, simpler Metropa dining car for their use. Finally, there was another utility and service wagon and the aforementioned Flakwagen bringing up the rear. In total, Göring's train had an operational staff, including bodyguards, of 171 people. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share. Also visit my other YouTube channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help...
You know what's crazy? Think about this, folks. You know how much money you can really make in Europe for tourism if you have one of these trains just like that, like intact. You know, you have to pay and, you know, make sure it looks very similar to what it used to look. Man, that'll be an amazing experience, man. Those trains that look like, wow, like high caliber train, like something from you would expect from the 20th century. But very interesting stuff. Seeing some of the trains we're using, some of the trains are not using it anymore. I'll be sad if they're not using those trains anymore. But it is what it is. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys would love to have more trains like this? Because they look kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie. I'll see you in the next one.